This has been an incredible day. We've heard from a variety of different organizations. And again, this is going to happen again tomorrow on Thursday and again Friday. So we hope that you keep continuing to come back and join us and learn more about all the opportunities that are here in the state of Delaware. This is amazing. So again, we're going to go ahead and learn about AstraZeneca today. So I think prior to us hearing from Courtney Miller, we're going to see a video that they put together for us so we can learn a little bit more about AstraZeneca.
This is for scientists and those who believe in the potential of science. It starts with curiosity, a surprise in the pattern, an obstacle that can't be explained. Step by step by step, they challenge, explore, and unlock the unknown, fueled by imagination, alone and with others. Repeating an experiment 1,000 times to have the chance to get it right. Once, but for forever. Making brave choices, choosing to push the boundaries, and choosing again and again to be led by science in everyday decisions, everyday interactions, no matter where they are. Because putting science at the center of everything is the best way to understand and transform disease, the best way to change people's lives. This is why we believe in what science can do.
Wow, that was amazing. So again, I wanted to remind everybody that we will have some time at the end of this session for Q&A. Make sure you drop those in the chat box, in the Q&A box down below. And welcome, Courtney.
Hey there, everybody. How are you? Joanna, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, perfectly. So I'm broadcasting live here from Wilmington, Delaware in our AZ headquarters. So thank you all so much for having me. I'm honored to be here today to just give you a high-level overview of AstraZeneca and to talk to you a little bit about some early career opportunities. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen here if I can find the right one. All right, so now you're seeing all kinds of messiness. So let me pull the right thing up for you in this moment. There you go. So we should be in business now. This is going to come through for you the right way. Okay, so talk to me about what you're seeing right now. Are you seeing my sharing screen, or are you seeing a big, are you seeing just the PowerPoint?
We're seeing the sharing screen.
Okay, so I'm going to swap this out.
There you go.
Okay, how's that look for you guys? Perfect. Much better?
Perfect.
All right, this is the beauty of the big conference room that I'm in here, making sure all this works right for you. So AstraZeneca, it's so great to be with you all today. To me, when I was sitting in your shoes, as a person who grew up in the area, AstraZeneca to me was nothing more than a big building that I drove past when I was on the way to the Concord Mall with my family, right? So I knew nothing about what went on inside the walls of AZ. I did not know that it was a large global organization present in every country around the world with over 65,000 employees. I did not know that there were life-changing medicines and that the purpose of the organization was really to impact patients. I've learned that along the way, but it hasn't necessarily been an easy journey for me. So I hope that you know through the Q&A, when we get to the end of this session, everything's fair game about what it is that you'd like to ask, not quite knowing your context and not quite knowing the background that you come from. Know that I'm here as someone who did not grow up in pharma. I was a teacher before I made the transition into the corporate world. And so my career journey has been anything but direct. You will not know all the answers and you'll figure it out as you go, right? But let me tell you about how amazing AZ is. So as a company, we are very much grounded within our values. That was very appealing for me 5.5 years ago when I was looking to leave the field of education and come into a more adult education type role. The values stuck out to me right away, so I wanted to highlight them for you today. So we follow the science. So as you saw in the intro video, there's no doubt about it that this is a company that is grounded in science. That does not mean you have to be a subject matter expert, know anything about science or love science, right? Because our organization is built on many different executive teams, all the way from R&D, through operations, through enabling functions like an HR role that I'm in, down into our therapeutic areas, which we'll talk to in a bit. We put patients first. So that being at the core of our values and everything we do, that comes through every single day here at work. The work that we do, no matter what role you're in the company, is for patients. And there's something beautiful about that. We play to win. So we're a business, we're competitive. So there are some of us who are more competitive than others based on our roles. I currently sit within the commercial organization. The commercial organization is made up of rock star sales and business people. So we absolutely are playing to win on a regular basis. We do the right thing. Can't tell you how many decisions where we're sitting around the table and we all have to agree on, let's make sure we're doing the right thing, critical. And we are entrepreneurial. And that was the number one value actually that brought me to AZ. Because I knew that there was space for innovation and for people who think differently. And for me, that was really appealing. So beyond that, right, to make it even better, this company is dedicated to being a great place to work. And that is far much more than words on paper. And this came to be actually as a strategic priority for the organization in 2013. So looking back a bit now, AstraZeneca was not in the best place competitively. Our pipeline was fairly weak. We needed to reshape the culture. We had a new CEO in place who was looking to disrupt things a little bit, and this was all before I got here. So when I arrived, being a great place to work was already one of our strategic priorities for the business, and it's gotten better every single year. So as great place to work remains one of our strategic priorities, these three things that you see on this screen are core to any area of the business that you work in. So delivering growth through therapeutic area leadership, that's what that TA stands for. So the medicines that we deliver are aligned to therapy areas. We are looking to accelerate innovative science. So much like the video showed, there are scientists and R&D that every day come to work to find the art of the possible. In science. That blows my mind when I think about it. And every time I have a chance to visit a lab, I couldn't be more inspired. And then as an HR professional, being a great place to work and making sure that that culture is infused throughout the business is, of course, very near and dear to my heart. So the next thing I want to show you here before we progress, to just emphasize the greatest driver for us in the Great Place to Work strategy is that our work has true meaning. And so regardless of who you speak to, right, across 100 plus countries that we operate in, it's clear that we all share and are motivated by the same purpose. I would say that when I entered AZ from a different, industry, different sector, I wasn't quite sold on that. I had heard a lot in the news about pharma. I wasn't quite sure how the work that somebody like me in HR, how that would impact patients. It's become clearer and clearer every day. And it is true that no matter where you are in the globe, that this is what drives the company. So before I came to this role, where I am now, looking after talent and development in the US business, I was in a global role. So I flew to the UK a lot. I was in different parts of the world, different parts of the country all the time. Being an HR person, I thought patients won't come up that often. No way, no how in the talent development space. Well, they absolutely do. And so when you work for an organization that's grounded in making a difference for patients, you feel that. Because every day, right, you can have a great day, you can have a bad day. Work can sometimes be work. Work can sometimes be the most inspirational thing that you can do. It just depends. It ebbs and flows like everything else. But when you're grounded in what science can do for patients, for your brothers, your sisters, your mother, your father, your grandparents, we all have medicine around us on a daily basis. And when you start to pay attention to that and know that you're working for a company that makes those medicines, it becomes a really beautiful connection and career path. So with that, AstraZeneca has a very bright future. It's an organization that's growing as many industries are being impacted by the ever-changing times, the unprecedented circumstances that the pandemic has brought to us. We still continue to be grounded in growth. So our organization is growing, mostly based on the scientific pipeline that we have. So our core main therapy areas are oncology, CVRM, which is cardiovascular and respiratory medicine, and respiratory, which now is actually respiratory and immunology, which is a new branch of our organization. And we are very dedicated to being a sustainable organization that invests in the future. So there is so much to be said for what this slide represents, and I'm keen to see what questions you might dive into. Now, this part I was really keen to share with you. So as this populates for you, I just want you to think about the world and the workplace, right? And how some of the jobs that you might aspire to may not even exist yet. The talents that we're looking for in this crazy space of talent and development and what that means for a corporation. Gosh, there's so much to be said for this. So digitization and how we are tracking moving forward. So digitization are changes in technology that are opening up endless possibilities to automate processes and leverage data. So at AZ, you have headquarters, office jobs like the one that I'm sitting in. You have ops facilities, operations facilities. There's one in Newark, Delaware, where they're actually making the medicine. So think about what the digital world is doing there. You have R&D locations where research and development are core to the operations within that space. So think about what digital may be doing there. It is phenomenal, right, to think about that and what that will mean for future careers. So no matter what it is that you're aspiring to and what you may be thinking about right now, think digital and be prepared for interview questions that are regarding digital. The gig economy. So the gig economy means we're seeing a growing shift away from permanent jobs in favor of collaborations, partnerships, freelance, and the delivery via the crowd. So if you think about that, it's easy to say, I'm going to apply for a job, I'm going to get a job in this space, and I'm going to be there for 30 years. That's the story of my grandparents, mainly the story of my parents. That's no longer our story. We will move around within our careers often, and this gig economy will change. So don't never be afraid to take a risk in something that may seem temporary, that may eventually become permanent. Global talent. So this is near and dear to my heart. Thanks to technology, the world is getting smaller and geography is no longer the barrier it once was. So how profound, right, on the heels of the pandemic, where we can connect to each other virtually via a platform like the one we're on right now, via Zoom, and automatically be connected to each other. Time zone becomes irrelevant, location becomes irrelevant, and it creates a beautiful environment for talent development. So never be limited by where you think you want to live. Never be limited by a role that says it's geographically bound. Always go for the interview. Always submit the resume. The world is changing quickly. The social enterprise. So as trust in governments declines, expectations of companies continue to grow, and it is no longer enough for companies to only deliver commercial success. So a pillar of our company being a great place to work, like that is a great example of the social enterprise. Being a sustainable organization, caring about the environment, that makes us a social enterprise. You want to be looking for that as you shop your careers. Lifelong learning. The half-life of skills is rapidly decreasing as work changes and the pace of technology accelerates. So another near and dear to my heart topic is lifelong learning. You may go to school for one thing. Those capabilities may expire quite quickly. So if nothing else, you have to demonstrate in your career that you have learning agility. You have to demonstrate in an interview that that is one of your biggest strengths, that you will learn, you will pivot, you will change, whatever the company needs, you'll be there and you'll be ready. 5 generations at work, great topic for today. So longer lives and advanced technology mean more of us working together for longer. And so Generations at Work is actually one of our many IND pillars. And so when we think about Generations at Work, we do have a strategy aligned to early talent, both recruitment and development. And so I'm lucky enough to be here at AZ in the US, in this commercial market, to be working on building out that early talent strategy. So that is a really phenomenal space to be in, and quite an honor of a job to have. It's also very uncharacteristic for me to talk without the engagement. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a story before we take a pause and hopefully get into some Q&A and some dialogue that will help flesh this out. So the first thing that I want to tell you as you think about your careers right now is the counsel of making sure you understand that your development journey and where you take your career lies solely in your hands. You own it. There is part of that's terrifying and part of that's really empowering. Lean into the empowering part. Who you network with, who you submit your resumes to, who you connect with on LinkedIn, the initial jobs that you have, how you shape your career, what your bold aspirations are for yourself. That responsibility is yours. You will find plenty of people along the way that will ensure that the universe aligns to get you where you want to be. But step into this phase of your life knowing that that is your ownership, and really stand in that power, because there is something phenomenal that will happen when you're able to do that. Find the right network, find the right support, use your learning agility, but know that. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story because it is pretty non-traditional. So I grew up in Kennett Square, PA. If you know Kennett, it's just over the line from Hockessin, Delaware. So I grew up in this area. I went to Kennett High School, and I wanted to be a marketing executive on Madison Avenue in New York City when I was 16 years old. That's what I wanted to do. My natural affinity was towards people. So I was always, coaching swim lessons. I was a waitress. I had to work furiously from a very young age in order to afford my college education. And so there were things that naturally started to come into the hemisphere that I wouldn't have necessarily paid attention to, but marketing executive sounded really cool when I was 16. So I went to college, and in college, I got into sports journalism. And then I decided that I wanted to actually be a sports broadcaster. So I wanted to be on ESPN, and I got a job with the football team at Penn State, which was amazing. And I thought, okay, this is it for me. I'm going to definitely be, married to sports my whole life. A few years in, while also, recruiting, waitressing, getting all kinds of different exposure, working in the dean's office a bit, I then decided to work for an after-school sports program. In the after-school sports program, I thought, oh, right, education. Like I had kind of forgotten about this, that education could also be a career path. And I feel like maybe I should be doing this. This feels right. This feels like I'm giving back to society. This feels like it's where I can really make an impact. And so then I decided on a whim that instead of going into sports broadcasting, I was going to focus more into education. And so from there, I worked a few years. I got my master's degree, moved out of the center of Pennsylvania into Philadelphia, went to UPenn, and I got a degree in teaching, learning, and curriculum design, which in and of itself is pretty broad. You don't really come out of a job that says I'm looking for teaching, learning, and curriculum designers, right? I had to look a bit. So I worked in higher ed, I worked in communications, took my love for writing a little bit, my love for education, made it all blend, found some really great mentors along the way, realized that I was pretty good at developing talent. At that point, I was ready to start a family. So I have 4 children. Ages 12, 9, 3, and 2. And so that balance became pretty important for me. So I went into the classroom for a while where I was having my older boys. I taught 5th grade back in my hometown of Kennett Square. I then went into administration, went to work for a virtual school, and from a virtual school experience ended up here at AstraZeneca because they were looking for somebody that had an educational background that could make curriculum with very high science content for which I knew nothing about, but could just take good curriculum design and make it resonate with the right people. So that skill set brought me to a very high science organization. When I was 16, nothing about where I was sitting in that time and space and where my mental brain was and what I was hoping for in my career said, I want to be a talent and development guru. I want to be a chief learning officer. I want to be a chief HR officer. None of that was in my hemisphere at all. So you will continually be shaped by the experiences you have, by the people you meet. Let that happen. It may not make sense. There will be parts of it that are of the journey that are beautiful and parts that are really hard. But at the end of the day, you will be so thankful to be able to look back no matter where you are and say, you know what, I see how that all made sense for me. So trust the process and own the journey. Okay, so with that, I see my time ticking away. And so I want to hand back over to Joanna, I believe, and to see if there's any questions that I can help out with.
Absolutely. It's amazing to see the journey that you've had and how that's sort of, it hasn't been a straight line. It's sort of been a little bit back and forth. And so we've got a really good question in the chat box that I think is really good for right now. So it's from an anonymous attendee, obviously a college student. I'm thinking of changing my major, but struggling to feel confident in that decision. How did you know making the leap from education to the corporate world was the right thing for you?
That's a good one. So I think when you're taking a risk and being brave, right, and courageous, that you don't know how the story is going to end. You don't know that it's going to be the right thing. If there's any part of your gut that's saying go for it, I do say go for it. If I had advice for my younger self, I would have said be bolder sooner, right? Don't get hung up on what might go wrong. Focus on what might go right. You can always go back to things and you can always change jobs. So I would say be bold and go for it.
Wow. I think that's amazing advice.
If we could only take that every day and internalize it, right?
I know. And I always hear that saying, leap and a net will appear. And so people are always so worried about taking that leap and just feeling confident that things will always work out. So I love that saying. I don't know who said it. I don't know where it came from. Leap
I love it.
And a net will appear.
Love it.
All right, so we've got some more. So we have Emily that is asking, what advice do you have for someone interested in working at a large corporation? How can you stand out and not just feel like a number?
So when I said earlier that you have to own your own development, right? You have to own your own journey. You also have to own your mental game. So sure, like you can be in a sea of 65,000 people and have the mental talk that it's really hard to stand out. And how are you ever going to carve your own path? I've had this conversation with myself over and over again, all the way back to when I decided on what university to go to, right? Do I go small? Do I go big? What do I do? You own it. Make an impact on the people that are in your direct hemisphere, whoever they are, and your message will start to spread. Your impact, your net, right, will start to expand. And there's risk there too. But I also think the more confidence you have and the more you're able to really stand in that power, and just know that you will not go into anything. You will not go into a group of 10 people and make widespread impact right away overnight. No matter what it is, you have to step into it. So I would say, again, kind of trust the process, do what you feel is right, and don't be intimidated just because the potential for impact because of the size of a company or a place might be bigger.
Right. Awesome.
Good questions.
Yeah, I know. Putting you on the spot here.
I love it.
Okay, here's a good one from Chris T. Do you have advice for a high school student interested in biopharm? Are there internships for high school students? And they can be really hard to find, but are there opportunities out there for high school students to get experience?
So Christy, that's a really good question. I am partially embarrassed to say, but also partially see a huge opportunity right in this space for AZ. So our early talent net has always been fairly small. So we have internships that are always posted on our website, which I meant to pull up and share a screen for you before I end up my presentation. But there's always early talent internships, but they're not for high school students. So just getting a bit of exposure. You know what, I'm going to be bold enough to say on this call, find me on LinkedIn. Let's pick a day, right? When we're allowed to have visitors back in the workplace again, where we can make that happen. Otherwise, the least we can do this summer is get off the ground a deeper dive session into some of the opportunities that might be available as a result of this call.
Right. And I'll just add on there, just because AZ is one of our partners here at FAME. So getting involved with an organization like FAME, where you're actually, because we bring in AstraZeneca a lot to our students and to our network, and we make sure that we're connecting them to AstraZeneca. So they are high school students, but they're getting the connection and they're meeting the people. And so it also then just goes into this next question from Emily. What advice do you have for high school students and college students looking for professional mentors?
Joanna, I feel like you probably have the resources to answer this appropriately with what you have set up right now. From where I sit, my advice is, again, be bold, right? LinkedIn is a really great place to find AZ people or any industry that you're interested in, any company, and send them a message and say, hey, this is me. I'm interested in your organization. I'm interested in building out a career. Would you like to have like a Zoom call, coffee talk? Let's get to know each other. I want to pick your brain a little bit. I would do that as much as possible.
Absolutely. And one more, how has your role changed at AstraZeneca since the pandemic began?
So being in HR in a really large global organization, right? This has been one of the biggest learning experiences this year, because everything that was planned, and I'm sure most people from anywhere would say this, anything that was planned this year did not go as planned. So anything that we were thinking about in January and February, the universe kind of laughed and said, yeah, that's really funny, not this year. So we've been firefighting. There has never been a time where leaders have had to be more in tune with the people that they're leading. So in education, we talk about differentiated instruction. This is like differentiated leadership, right? You have people that are carrying things on their shoulders that they maybe have always been carrying, but the pandemic changed their world as well in X, Y, and Z way. Any working parent was automatically slammed with daycare and schooling happening under the same roof as your employment. You couldn't go places you needed to. If you're home working alone all the time, well, then that comes with its own set of things. If you're taking care of elderly parents, that comes with its own set. So there's been an acute awareness on leadership and the art form of making sure you realize that the people that you work for are human, and bringing a level of emotional intelligence. We always had it, but it had to be prioritized relentlessly this year. I hope we never lose it now that we've spent so much time focusing on it. But it has been the year of agility, I'll say that much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that concludes our session here. I'm so thankful that you were able to join us today, Courtney. This has been amazing to just have a great one-on-one talk with you. It's been really interesting to see somebody that was in the education field then do that pivot. And we did have a session early this morning with the Delaware Department of Education and what it's like to become a teacher. So it's really great to sort of round this out with somebody that actually did get an education degree and that worked in the school system, that has pivoted, because that was one of the things that we talked about being a soft skill that was necessary, and that has taken a different role at AstraZeneca. And like what I always like to say to individuals is, we've seen just a huge variety of businesses and organizations today. And if one of these organizations resonates with you, their mission or their values, their vision, there's probably a place for you in that organization. So you don't need to be a scientist to work at AstraZeneca. You can have an HR background, you can have a teaching background. So if there is a place that today or tomorrow or Friday that you really connect with that organization, really look at that organization and see where you can fall in.